this one.
And then there's one right there too. He's a little bit bigger. And there's one right there too. Smaller guy.
Smaller than the ones in our house.
One on the wall on the left.
Oh, cute.
And there's one on this side of the wall on the left too. One down here and one right there.
Cool.
Far out there's really different. All dormant and dark too.
Shine your light on him for me.
There's some bigger ones right here.
Salamanders.
Double tap and it'll stay on.
Bunch of them up there.
There's a big one right there, right under you. See it?
We gotta keep up with them.
Nice. Oh, it's so cute. Shine the light on it for me. Neat. Wow.
So, if you guys look around yourselves in this area right here, where we came in was an artificially dug entrance. Whenever it was discovered, they realized that there was only a short distance in between the rock here and the outside, so they actually dug through to build that entrance. But there's actually a theory, and we'll talk about a couple different things that support it, that at one point there was a natural entrance there, and all of it collapsed at one point. So as we look around here, might make a little bit of sense seeing all these huge pieces falling down here.
Some that's really cool. Goes over thousands, tens of thousands, to millions of years.
Wow. Incredible.
It is cold there.
Alright guys, so welcome to our cave here. Before we go any further, I want to debrief you guys on just some details about the formation of the cave itself, as well as the formation of these mineral deposits that we see around here, which are some of the main attractions of the cave. So, before we can have any of these mineral deposits actually form, we have to have a cavern which they form, just a void of rock. So, how this actually happens,
It's cool.
Idea.
we have something called the Leasburg Fault, which is a local relatively inactive fault. It causes slight separation
really cool.
of layering. It actually allows water to trickle into the rock here.
You see your breath?
This rock is limestone and relatively easily broken down by water. So over time, the water that got through into that fault line was actually able to disintegrate all the rock around us. Eventually, about a mile and a half away is our closest natural entrance that's currently open. But the natural entrance was eventually eroded away and created by the actual water that was forming the cave. Then all the water drained out, and you're actually left with a void rock like we have right here. After that, we can actually start to have the formation of mineral deposits. So our stalactites, stalagmites, things that you guys have heard of before. So basically what happens is you have four different ingredients. You have CO2, water, time, and rock. So CO2 and water actually combine on the surface, forming something called carbonic acid. Carbonic acid trickles through the soil of the rock, and carbonic acid is basically just club soda, because it's just mixed with water. It has very, very slight acidity, as the name suggests, and as it's trickling through the soil of the rock, it's actually able to break down and pick up minerals within the rock. And so over time, and over a great amount of time, you'll actually have these little droplets that you can see up in ceiling there, pass through the ceiling, and when they enter the cave, they actually release that CO2, and they're able to bind minerals that they picked up on whatever surface that they touch. So, in the instance of our stalactites up here, basically, as water droplets hang there, they're going to form onto the end of the formations up there. So the smallest stalactites are called sodastraws. They're actually straw-like in appearance. They have a hollow interior, so water droplets can actually pass through the middle, which is really, really neat. And so they'll attach the minerals from the water droplets onto the end of the formation as they pass through. And then once that straw gets clogged up, it'll actually start to form on the outside, making what's technically called a stalactite. So the stalactites are tight to the ceiling, and then stalagmites, like these down here, might one day reach the ceiling if they continue to grow. And so basically, if water droplets fall on the ground, over time they're going to build up and up as they deposit the minerals on the surface that they land on, and you'll get a stalagmite. Over here, this big white pillar here is called a column. A column is essentially a stalactite meeting with a stalagmite, or if a stalagmite did actually reach the ceiling by itself, or a stalactite reach the ground by itself, that would also be a column. You can see one back there as well. And so, other than stalactites, stalagmites, and columns, we have what are called dripstones, what are called flow stones. So, stalactites, stalagmites, and columns are all referred to as dripstones because they form from a mechanism of dripping water. Most of the time, they'll form straight up and down. Very few exceptions, but we'll actually see a couple of those really rare exceptions in this cave here in just a bit. But other than dripstones, we actually have what are called flow stones, where you have a surface, water trickles out from a crack, back in the rock, over a surface that exists already, and builds up minerals on top of the surface, forming kind of these glacial-looking formations. Really, really neat. And if you guys go to Onondaga, which I know some of you guys have bought combo tickets, they're going to have some really great examples of flow stones in that cave too. So that's our basic rundown of our cave 101 for stalactites, stalagmites, columns, and flow stones, pattern formation. Our main mineral that we see throughout the cave is called calcite. It's calcium carbonate. It's the same formula as limestone, and it'll also be evaluated by several different things. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But when calcite is active, it's going to be this bright white color. And when calcite is inactive, it's going to be more of a tan or cream color. And active formations are going to have water on them, consistently depositing new minerals. Inactive formations are not going to have that, so they're going to be dried out. They'll actually have little air pockets that expand over time, which completely changes the appearance and texture of the formation. So, as we're going through here, make sure you guys watch your head. Ceiling gets a little bit lower. You want to do limbo? That's an option.
About 6.7.
this section here, you actually have two different things that actually defy gravity in their formation. So the first of these two are actually going to be stalactites that are slightly swaying to the left. And you might notice this in pretty high concentrations of the stalactites. You can see
Like
there's over there, it's like 35-degree angle.
Wow.
And you can see where they're bending over here. There's some over there that are swaying to the left. And
There's
typically, you'd expect them to form straight up and down because they're going to follow the path of least resistance. They're going to go with gravity. So why would they form to the side? And basically, what the answer that we come up with is that there used to be that natural entrance there, and it collapsed at some point. But before it collapsed, it actually sent air currents through the cave, going deeper into the cave. And so whenever these air currents came through, they would actually blow the little droplets on the end of the formation slightly to the left. And so over time, they would actually trend to grow slightly to the left. So we actually have these leveling stalactites because of just wind blowing up those droplets. And then the other gravity-defying formation we have in here is something called Electites. These are also known as crazy straws. If you guys look at the ceiling, you might see some, but they're pretty tiny tendrils that are actually sticking off in all different directions. So here's a great example of one. It's not the stalactite itself, it's all the little things coming off the side of it. So it kind of looks like coral or something, but these tendrils are electites, and basically what we've come up with for how they actually form is they have little capillary tubes that direct the movement and deposition of minerals so that it can go against gravity. So it goes up, down, left, right, side to side, circular, and in all kind of wacky directions. But basically, we have no idea why it would choose to do this, but the capillary tubes would function basically like a plant stem to move water against gravity. So how a plant stem moves water up, it uses that same mechanism to move it in whatever direction it wants to go. But these are really neat. We actually have one on the side, but this is like a mini column there. It's really neat. I found it like 2 tours ago. I didn't even realize it was there, so kind of neat. But these are really, really weird. And that's kind of why I like this section so much. We don't really see these electites in any other section of this cave, and we don't see as good examples of this in Onondaga either, so it's kind of a mystery as to why it would form right here. And
I wonder if the water pressure isn't higher in this location.
yeah.
So with them being hollow and straws coming down, if they have those canals coming off of it, the water pressure from above can force it through, which would give it the ability to push up because your actual water level is way higher than it is down here.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a balloon where it's pushing out, and then it could go in any direction because gravity is, it's actually working with gravity because gravity is pushing down through the straw and then out. Is the path of least resistance.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's just like, I don't know how those capillary tubes would form in the first place, you know? But it's really just cool. It is. Very cool. There's some neat ones right behind the ceiling too. Like these. This one just.
There's a couple up here that have like very bulbous,
Yeah.
like this one right here is really interesting. It almost,
I know there's one.
and then that one's kind of bulbous too, but look at that one. It's really,
Yeah. That one right there looks like someone actually, or it broke off. I don't know if someone broke it off, but
there's a lot on the floor too. You can see
you
them.
can see the soda straws down there. So, excuse me. You can see like a slice there, but
Yeah, that one's still pretty active too. That really knobby looking one.
kind of what he was saying with like water pressure. There's less rate of flow, like water wasn't flowing nearly as quickly, it's gonna stick around longer in these spots, actually forming these wider portions of the formation.
Amazing.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, there's that one, there's a bunch of pencils coming off those.
Now, some of these, like, the coral kind of stuff over here is actually a little bit different. We call this cave popcorn.
Oh, neat. There's a little pond.
So cave popcorn, it's not said that it forms the same as electites. It's said that it forms like a kind of like a flowstone, where basically water just gathers up in a specific area when it's flowing over a surface, and then for some reason, maybe just kind of hydrogen bonds with it, with water itself, forming these little bubbles. Basically, it chooses to deposit minerals in specific areas. But there's also a theory that this popcorn forms from actually evaporation. So if you were in close proximity to a natural entrance at one point, you would have more dry air coming through. So if part of this was actually evaporating when there was water coming across it, it would most likely lead to these water droplets now fully depositing all their minerals on the surface of the stalactite. And then over time, it would actually create these more bulbous formations on the spots where the water droplets actually evaporate off and leave the minerals behind. So that's the theory with that. And what we expect to see with the evaporation is them all forming on one side, closest to the drier air. So for like right here, that might be true, but if you look at the ground, you can see it's all over the place. So it's kind of a toss up there as to how exactly that formed. And really the fun part about being in a cave like this is just, it takes so long for these things to form, and it's so hard to replicate the conditions that it's really almost impossible to know exactly how these things happen. So, and
that would also make sense because this looks like the lowest part, so it could be like a little stream just to go run there.
yeah.
And that's why it's not forming up here on top as much.
But these little nodules in the ceiling are cool as well. And we have just these little tiny spots where minerals have actually deposited these big, look like just like frozen droplets all over the place here. It's really neat. Yeah, just a lot of weird stuff in this section. And in our stream over here, you can actually see it to the right here. We have manganese, which is actually a mineral that's deposited from the water, covering the surface of the rocks in the little stream here. So we have a high concentration of manganese in our water sources in this cave in particular. So we actually can kind of tell where the water has been just based on where these mineral deposits are. But if I were to like flip one of these rocks over, it wouldn't have black on the side that wasn't exposed to water. So it's just depositing from the waters itself.
There's one here just right there.
It's another entrance back there. Oh, look.
But with the left swaying stalactites, we'll see that really pretty far into our passage here in the cave. We'll actually see at some points they sway in opposite direction in this one section near where we kind of stopped seeing it. And so we might have actually, it might have actually experienced just changing airflow direction just because of coming off of the surface or something like that in that region. But I'll point that out when we come to it. This is a really, really weird column here because you can see that this stalactite would not be supported by this amount of ceiling here. So definitely at some point part of that ceiling fell down, or got washed away, collapsed, dried out, or something like that, and so we only have part of this left. So it's just very odd. Yeah. Alright guys, so when we came in, the limestone and dolomite around us was around 350 million years old. As we walked in, we basically walked into the mountainside, so we've actually gone pretty decently underground. And so as we've done that, we've pretty much gone 50 million years into the past even further. So right now, the rocks around us are around 400 million years old. This section is actually a fossilized reef, and so these big kind of egg-looking things all around us are called stromatolites, and they're actually fossilized algae. It's cyanobacteria or blue-green algae.
So
And
these
so
could be
these are real giant fossils from an era where we actually had
There's
shallow marine environments in Missouri.
some of the
So
oldest stuff in the world actually considered.
these would have done really well in that environment. They would have grown into these big balls of organic matter, basically. And so just photosynthesizing, reproducing in shallow marine environments. Over time, they got buried in layers of sediment and actually fossilized. So the organic material here is limestone. So limestone is easily broken down by water. And the outer layer is actually chert. Chert is flint, but it's a different color. And it's not easily broken down by water. It's a silicate material, so it's a little stronger. And so this chert actually protected all this limestone from just being washed away whenever this section of the cave was actually formed. But all of these fossils existed way, way before the cave even started considering forming. And it would have been probably a couple, like 10 million years ago that the cave started to form. Just a rough estimate, because we can't really know just because it's formed by water. And it just leaves a void in the rock, so there's nothing to trace or date about it. But if we were to estimate this being, 10 million year old cave, these are still 400 million years old, so it's 40 times the age of that. With a huge, huge dam. But because of this chert material, we can actually see these fossils in section cave, which I do. And when you guys, or if you guys go to Onondaga, you will see some more, but they're not nearly as good as these. These are really, really good examples. So, up around this corner here, if you actually look to the top right at the ceiling, you can see a bunch of little tiny calcite crystals kind of embedded into the ceiling here where a stromatolite was. Well, you guys come around there, but it's almost like a geode that formed at one point. So basically the theory is that water got within one of these stromatolites. It actually broke down the limestone within it and then recrystallized it as calcite crystals. So look at the ceiling, you can see those reflective crystals up there. But this is a really, really neat bonus feature.
Oh, wow. It's like Druzy quartz.
Mm-hmm.
You see a lot of rock like that in the Missouri River.
Kind of weird looking though.
Is it a newt?
Normally I don't see newts in here. It almost looks like a worm or something.
Did you say it's a parasite?
A really big F though.
Some kind of alien parasite. Alright guys, let's just
Ignore the bottom, dude.
it's no big deal. If you guys actually look back over here, we can see some cracks in our column here. So you guys might have noticed the cracks in the columns back there when we were walking in, but these are actually caused by clay settling underneath the column. So over time the clay settles, becomes more compact, dries out, loses a little bit of that water mass. And so when it does that, it actually shrinks away from the column itself. And so this column no longer has support where it needs it. And so it'll actually crack frequently under its own weight. Whenever that ground is no longer there, then it becomes basically a stalactite. So can't support all that weight because it's a stalagmite and a stalactite. And so that's why we got that. But you can actually see where this one in particular is reforming in several spots from that crack. And this is another kind of supporting factor of where we came in being a natural entrance at one point, just because there would be more dry air coming through, more dry air to actually dry out the clay underneath. So since we see so many of these cracked columns, that is a good supporting factor for that. I'm very curious about this. I definitely saw it move, and it definitely moved again. But there's so much clay around it.
Magnanite?
Manganese.
Manganese, that's it. Okay.
You see manganese right there.
Yeah, he said wherever you see that, you'll know that the water's been flowing through there.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You could see like.
I want to see this weird worm you're talking about.
Centipede.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a centipede. Okay.
cave centipede?
I'm gonna try to take a picture of it because I don't know why.
I think it's stuck in the clay.
It's moving. Yeah, that's a centipede.
Take a picture and see what you can find.
This is weird.
You might be able to zoom in and off the phone.
What?
Just hopefully don't drop the phone because it'll be pretty hard to get out.
Yeah.
Why is that phone print in there?
Yeah, that was from. That's actually a naturally forming foam.
Be careful, Josh. Don't kick any rocks.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
That is
Jake.
such a weird thing to find.
Wow. Yeah, that is.
Since it's underwater.
Do be careful if you guys are coming over.
Yeah, because it could like chip off too. I don't want you to fall.
As long as you stay on this rock here, you'll be fine. But I just don't want you guys to get muddied up. That really does look like an alien parasite.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what it's but that's its problem.
Yeah, salamander will find it.
Yeah, it's food for something.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I kept looking for something like that the whole time.
That is really weird. All right.
Unfortunately, it must have fell from above. We're just trying to talk about that walking stick. The walking stick was trying to walk on something that's slippery like the mountain. And I thought it was going to fall down, but he was smart about it. And he stayed with it. Really interesting. The rock is very hard in here.
It really is beautiful. Natural beauty everywhere. Wow, look at that, how it's got like a hole
That's cool.
Yeah. The, like eggs. Wow.
For sure. Someone thought that. This must be very much safe through here since they put it in the sea.
Oh, we better catch up.
I think it probably comes with very slope and fire in there. How there it goes. Just continue. It'd be really cool to walk through, but very dangerous.
Be careful.
I always thought caves were so simple in Minecraft.
This area that we're entering right here is called the Sodastraw Room. You might notice why. Sometimes referred to as the Sodastraw Room. But we'll have a ton of stalactites through this section, so we can take our time so we can take it all in. And just make sure to watch your head. Don't get too distracted by how awesome they are, because there will be some that are just low, hanging out in the middle of the path. So watch out for those.
Wires too.
Yeah, naturally occurring wires. Yeah, let's actually take millions of use this one. Don't touch it. They actually had lighting here for a couple of years back in the 70s. Lester Dill was the guy who's born in that cabin. He owned this cave in Onondaga back until 1982. And so they had lighting here for a little bit, like 5 years, and then vandals came in and actually destroyed it. So he gets to do the flashlight tour instead, which is more fun. It's pretty cool, like, definitely biased a little bit.
Wow, that's cool down there. Very cool. Look at that one. See how it's looking on down to the ground.
Look, there's a whole slab of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it over here too.
Low clearance.
Yeah. Yeah, there's really a lot.
We're opening up a little bit down here.
Yeah.
Quite possible. Yeah, first.
Didn't know it existed. But they want to fill up.
Wow.
Alright guys, so as you're walking down our slight incline here, just do make sure to watch your step, because some of the points of this path are just slick for no reason. Or just because of water. But if you look over here in this area right here, originally it was flat all around, but over time the stream actually kind of carved it out and essentially eroded away all the clay that made up the base of this area. Whenever it was washed away, it all collapsed in, so you can see how this is formed. And we call this a slump pit. So, whenever basically you have
sinkholes forming within caves that we refer to as slump pits. And the bottom is about an 8 to 12 foot drop, 8 to 12 foot hole, and it's actually sealed off, so it can't really get any further. 6 miles of this cave, and we're really only seeing about anywhere from a mile of it, just because we're seeing what's accessible. But they are talking about reopening up off-trail tours at some point, which is like an 8-hour commitment of just crawling. A lot of like foot-high ceilings, being covered in clay. So. I really hope people do that. At some point. Yeah, we're gonna do that at the bottom. Like that captain in Ohio that we went to. This is actually a man-made pool right here. This was made by Lester Dill. He calls it a reflection pool, but I'm not really sure what it's supposed to be reflecting. Normally they'll either reflect droplets that fall into the water. You can see the ripples on the side.
Oh, I see it now.
Or they'll reflect.
Keep the light up on the top up here.
Yeah.
Now you can see.
Yeah, you can see the reflection down in the bottom there. But the thing is, normally there'd be like stalactites or something cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's just kind of a flat ceiling here. So kind of an interesting choice, but
There's a lot better ones.
if you guys notice in like this section where we have our Sodastraw Stalactites, you can actually notice how the sway is actually to the right, so it's towards the entrance, which is whack. So I'm assuming that it circulates around here and then turns around, because when we come around this corner, you can actually see them still sway to the left near the ceiling, but then sway to the right, moves around.
Here's where it hides, so the current reflection change.
But these are still swayed really far, you know, way back here.
Careful.
Do the ones that go to the right generally, are they below this line here?
Yeah, yeah, they're all pretty much.
So below that the air flow may have changed after it's been washed away more?
I'm thinking that, like, physically it was just kind of turned around by something. I'm not a huge physics guy. So.
I'm almost wondering if the air was flowing one way and this was all filled in before. And then after it washed off, the airflow may have been going the other way and that caused the bottom, that's why the lower ones may be going the opposite direction.
Honestly, maybe.
Cause it seems like they're all below that line.
Right?
Or, the heat from the open entrance could make it flow this way because hot air rises and then it cools down when it gets into the cave and then it'll start hitting the other way.
Lots of theories.
But over here we have our second slump pit. This one actually continues back at the bottom for about 1/8 of a mile. Do something called a peanut butter passage.
Yeah, a bunch of
Basically,
buckets.
the clay and the water combined to make a clay that has a consistency of peanut butter. So it gets everywhere, and then it ends up in something called the Birth Canal, which is a 4.5 by 1.5 foot room. And the challenge is to see how many people you can fit in the room. So I think the number to beat is like 8. So good luck.
Well, there's 9 of us. Let's see.
Well, there
That's
was.
what I'm saying.
There was, and I know this anyways.
No, there is because there's 8 of us and him.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, I guess
over
you count the
here,
guy. We had
We have a seismic station, seismic graph.
Oh,
It's
neat.
actually outputting data currently to our visitor center. You can scan a QR code to see that. But this was installed back in 1989. I believe it was a partnership with Umzel, where they came out here and installed this. And so we have 3 fiber optic cables that run around this corner, and they actually run up a 160-foot hole in the surface.
Wow.
So
How far are we below?
about 160 feet.
Oh, okay.
So this hole runs all the way up, and this was put in the 70s by actually the Army Corps of Engineers. They were doing some surveying for their Merrimack Dam project, where they wanted to put a dam on the Merrimack River, make the Merrimack Lake. That never got put into place, which is why we're actually able to come into this cave at all, because otherwise it would have been completely flooded for sure.
Oh, there's stairs right there.
Yeah, they made big car
Exactly.
stairs.
But they left the hole there, obviously, they
Did you
didn't
ever
fill it up or
flashlights
anything.
making a frequency?
But Lester Dill took advantage of this to actually move all the concrete and materials down into the cave.
It's the batteries.
So these paths made out of concrete here, all that concrete was actually funneled through that hole there. And so, for some reason, he
Frequency
left it
coming from the
open
flashlights,
for
I guess.
like 3 years. And they used to have a real problem with just like mice and other small, poor, very unfortunate small critters falling 160 feet to their very untimely demise.
And rapidly being consumed by centipedes.
Yeah, apparently. And, well, the hole was plugged up a while ago, but it was like a legitimate job for someone to come in here and take out the dead animals, like take out the trash.
Oh.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know we had a mouse that died in Onondaga like a couple of years back, and just it stuck up the entire cave. Like it's crazy how potent smells are in caves. Nobody's fart.
Well, hopefully it stays air conditioned down here, so it doesn't.
I will say that airflow in this cave I think is a little less stagnant.
Wow. Oh my goodness, guys, look.
Oh, wow.
Incredible. All right, watch your step.
This is actually the kind of last stage of our tour here. The other tour goes just crawling at the very bottom. There's the stream that goes back. It's got high ceilings for about a mile. So.
Wow, you can hear it flowing too.
So, this next part of our tour, we're actually going to go down these switchbacks, and we're going to go along the stream. We're actually going to look in the stream for critters, and what we're going to be looking for in particular is something called a Grotto Salamander. Grotto Salamanders are blind, they're translucent, they're extremely cool. We're actually going to be looking for their larvae, so like the young adult version of them. When they're adults, they basically look like normal salamanders, but they have skin over their eyes and they have translucent skin, so they're kind of pinkish, grayish. But the larvae here, they have a little bit flatter heads than salamanders, smaller arms and legs.
Your cell phone light is on.
Kind of pinkish and grayish. They're not going to be more than a few inches, but these are an endangered species, and I have actually had pretty good luck finding them in the stream down here. So since we don't have lights in this cave, that's actually why we can see them at all. Why we do the flashlight tour, just because if we had lights in the cave, they would know where the lights were. They can actually react to light. They're sensitive to it. And so whenever they would see these lights, they'd be like, oh, I'm out in the daylight. I need to leave. I need to be in the darkness because I'm adapted for the darkness. I need to stay out of the daylight because I will get eaten. Because I have nothing going for me in it. So they always pretty much avoid light as much as they can.
when we're down there, we'll spend some time looking for them.
Clay and dirt on
And this chasm here is really neat. We have a natural bridge actually going across the middle. So at one point the river would have come up, or not the river, but the stream. The water in the cave would have been right below there and carved that out, left that there. But this part of the tour is optional. If you do want to wait on these benches, you are free to. But I do recommend, especially if you find a grotto that really neat.
I'm going.
This is also where we have our cathedral bell, which is the namesake of the cave.
Hang on to the side though.
Glowstone, column combination, and several other little things that are really neat. But as we're headed down here, just take your time. Make sure to use the handrail, especially on certain spots if you don't need it, but I definitely recommend it. And I know it's kind of rusty and not great, but it gets the job done, so.
So are you pumping up the water through the poles? I saw a pipe hooking up to one of the handrails.
Oh yeah, so these pipes actually double as hoses, or these handrails rather. So like we have spigot right there. So at one point, it would have helped with laying the concrete, and just it also continues to help clean off the path. Get a bunch of clay in the path. So I'm not sure if it's currently hooked up.
So much. We should be looking down there to the handrails for out.
If you guys look at our chasm wall here, we can see actually layering within the rock. So if you look really closely, you can actually see veins of something called Glauconite, which is also known as green sand. It's kind of this greenish, light blue color. You can see some like right here where I am right now, but we'll see some more.
There's some up here.
Yeah, there's some right there too. And even higher.
What is that called again?
So it's called Glauconite or
That's what we were
Glauconite,
seeing.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were seeing a rock, a whole rock made out of that.
Yeah, the greenish stuff at the very beginning, that's like right above your head, as we're ducking through that first section.
Yeah,
It's
that's the
Glauconite as well.
Was that at the cabin?
But basically it has potassium and iron and silicates in it, so people have used it as fertilizers. It's kind of,
It's really chalky too, isn't
yeah,
it?
it's definitely chalky and kind of sandy, almost like sandstone. But it is really neat to actually see that layer in there. So you can see what happens over millions of years when you have specific layers in the sediment, and then they're buried and buried. And then over time they're buried by another layer again. And then more and more.
Ooh, there's lots of that.
You can see that formation now.
Yeah.
So in our screen here, we're going to be looking for the grottos in the water. That's going to be where they are. Obviously feel free to look outside the water, but we'll definitely have better look in the water. They're not going to be very big. They're going to be kind of gray to pinkish, very small. And yeah, kind of worm-like almost. It's a pretty large spot, so we'll take some time with this one, but I do ask you to stay on the side.
Oop, that's slick. Be careful.
If you see one, let me know, though.
They like to stay in the water, you said?
Yeah, they'll typically be in the water here. Unless we see
That's
an adult,
beautiful.
Yeah,
it's pretty rare. I've only seen one adult who's
a
actually
lot like green rock and like that.
a while back. They have those, so they spend their lives in the water.
So they would be pink or gray?
Or kind of clear, he said, maybe?
Yeah.
They're translucent and.
No, okay.
They are our top predators in the cave ecosystem. Vibrations in the water. But basically what happens in the cave is you have a couple layers that actually form the food chain. So at the very base, it's actually mostly bat poop, and then anything that washes it. I actually spotted a really young one. You guys come over here. You can see it right there. This one's more of a dark gray, and so when they're actually
Oh, they're little
Really
teeny
young.
tiny.
Yeah, when they're actually really young, they have some pigmentation. Oh, you can see them moving. Because they're actually born near the entrance of the cave, and then they make their way deeper into down the stream. And the adults basically lay the eggs, attach them to rocks, and then they're born, and they make their way down. Over time, they lose their sense of sight completely once they're adults, and they lose all their pigmentation as well. So this one just has some residual pigmentation still from being near the entrance. It is a cool spot though. He's in a very convenient spot for us to do for our purposes because he has a background highlights and oh, yeah, there's another one. This is more of a young adult right here. More transparent. Good spot. Look at that. So these are all going to be the larvae of the grotto. But once they get more clear like this, you actually start to see just the dark areas that are actually organs in its body there. Two right there. This is pretty much the gold standard, honestly, is finding.
Is this their favorite pool right here?
They do like this area right here for sure, and they also like over by that bridge right there. They like that section too. Oh, it's a good look today.
Oh, something splashed right there. Oh, I guess it's just dripping. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Wow. So pretty.
about the bat poop earlier. Basically, the bat poop is like the sun in the cave. It brings in nutrients that otherwise wouldn't have existed. And so the little invertebrates that actually live in the caves, things like that centipede, but also including things like isopods, amphipods, things that live in our stream here, and little snails. They actually will eat the bat poop, and then the salamanders can eat the little invertebrates.
I don't know what that square is.
And these little squares that you might see, or that you'll see in the stream here, are actually from a snail survey. It was done like 7 or 8 years ago, and they just left their stuff in the cave for some reason.
Oh no.
So I don't know if they were coming back for them, but basically they left these little plates here to try to see.
To collect snails, maybe
Yeah,
they go
thanks.
underneath them.
See the population numbers pretty much.
Oh, I gotcha.
See how many were there.
It looks like somebody was walking on the other side of there, because there's a footprint there.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, the rocks all look like the same rocks from our cabin. Look, all different kinds of rocks.
But the snails in here are no bigger than a pinhead. They're really, really tiny. I haven't actually identified one. But apparently they prefer the manganese-covered rocks like these for some reason. And they actually did do an entire study about that. So the Grotto Salamanders are endangered.
Okay, so do you guys keep tabs on those, like to count them whenever you see them, or?
So we do kind of keep an eye on them, but we're not doing any kind of monitoring to that extent. With grottos, one of the big reasons that they're endangered is really just they only live in caves.
Right.
And when you disturb a cave ecosystem, it's incredibly easy to do.
Right.
Like where you have people that have made caves into tourism things. Like this, I think, isn't as extreme of an example, but if you look at some of the caves where they have like cars driving through them, lights installed.
Right, like the Fantastic Caverns.
All the critters, so it pretty much shrinks their habitat, and they already have very limited habitat, so that's why they've become really endangered.
Do they need air sources, or?
So the larvae actually do have gills, so they can just basically respire in the water. But once they become fully grown adults, they don't have gills anymore, so they will come out and breathe the air.
So do you see them crawling around sometimes in the dry spots?
I've only seen one adult actually so far in this cave.
Huh.
I saw one or two in Onondaga one time. Actually, I went back into like a back passage area where it's way away from any of the lights. I saw an adult back there, but in this cave, I've only seen one adult near the surface. And basically, the surface is ideal for things like salamanders just because
It's always wet.
it's always warmer, it's always damp, and it's always got some little crickets running around, so they can munch on those.
Wow. So beautiful. pretty.
It's underwater.
Honestly, finding two is a pretty good amount,
Do the salamanders lay eggs or?
Yeah, they lay their eggs on the rocks.
So pretty much the adults will go upstream, they'll go back the opposite direction we just walked.
Uh-huh.
They'll go all the way like a mile up towards the entrance of the cave, and that's where they'll lay their eggs. Out there.
Wow.
It'll be deep enough that it's away from things that can just walk in.
And then the water just brings the babies back down?
So they'll basically move down on their own, but they'll go with the water, so it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, the reflection.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite things.
Wow, that's pretty.
Like this really big hole spot.
I think some of this is just layers of chert, but it is that same material there. So, here's our turnaround point. So, our stream back here actually continues about 2 miles to a kind of a spring exit below the Glauconite River up into it. And right here we have probably our biggest UFM in our cave here.
Is this the bell you were talking about?
It's called the Cathedral Bell. So, big bell, only big enough to belong in a cathedral. So, that's where we got the name. This cave was discovered in 1919 by 2 guys called Peddle Brothers and then their friend Adair. And when they saw this, they just thought it looked like a cathedral bell, so that's where we got the name. But in this area, we have a couple cool little things. Over here, we actually have a couple stairs that lead up to a little room. There used to be lights up in that room that pointed over to this, but again, vandals actually destroyed the lighting systems back sometime between 1972 and 1982. So after that, the state parks decided to not install any lights on their own because we want to actually preserve and to the best of our extent without kind of interfering with the caves and natural processes. So that's why we really argue flashlight tours.
Yeah. See, these are the things I was talking about. Those must be markers
Over here we actually have
for certain.
calcite that's built up on the surface of the water. So when you guys think of calcite, you might think it's just kind of bright white material, which is true. But calcite in its purest form is actually going to look like this. So when you look on the surface of the water here, where you see this almost clear material, this is going to be what a pure calcite mineral actually looks like. This is the result earlier, they were really too small. See the details in there. But when we actually see those more white deposits there, these are actually caused by dilution of magnesium, which is one of the ingredients of gold. But it's pretty small amounts of magnesium, but it is contained in the chemistry of the geology around us. That's why we actually see it.
There's crystals, you see?
And then over here, we actually had a piece of the ceiling that fell down, so you can see a couple stalactites actually sticking out. It used to be up there. And so it's fallen down and gotten wedged here. Originally there was most likely clay that held it up so it could be sealed more or less to this flowstone here. But you can actually kind of lie at it like I'm doing right now and look on the wall. You can actually see it kind of looks like an old guy reading a newspaper. That's what we like to say. With like the Sherlock Holmes hat.
Oh, yeah, the shadow.
Yeah,
Nice.
kind of goofy.
That is really cool.
And then over here, we have a couple of bat and wing bones in a small pile right here. You guys want to look at those?
Oh, unfortunate bat.
Some bones over there.
Yeah. That's why the tree goes up to the room up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the lowest point of our tour. We're about 240 feet below the surface. And so, as it is the lowest point, this is where we like to do our total darkness. So if you guys are interested, we'll pull our lights off.
Turn your lights off for a second. Come up here, guys.